Yo, what's up everyone? It's me again, back with another video. Okay, so this may or may not be my last build of the league because I am running out of things to do in SSF in the end game, so yeah. But I figure I just made this video to talk about this build that I've been working on and kind of just explain, what's going on here. So this is a Lancing Steel of Spraying cast on crit build. We're triggering two spells. We're triggering Crackling Lance of Disintegration and Manabond. And there's a lot of different mechanics that's going on behind the scenes. If you want a full guide on how Lancing Steel of Spraying cast on crit works, I made a 40-minute video where I explain everything about this skill, but the main idea here is that Lancing Steel of Spraying hits 13.7 times a second, and then with 14% CDR, we're basically able to trigger two spells at 6.8 seconds per 6.8 triggers per second per spell. So that's basically what we're doing in this build. And the two spells that I've chosen are Manabond and Crackling Lance of Disintegration. So my original plan was to make like a Manabond cast on crit character and scale mana using Foulborn Choir of the Storm, which allows you to overcap lightning res to get a large amount of mana. But then I realized that Crackling Lance of Disintegration has like such high damage numbers that I actually got more damage just doing a double cast on crit setup compared to Manabond one spell cast on crit with like a support. So that's why the Crackling Lance is there. But the main build and the main scaling is Manabond. So that's basically what's going on here. This build with this dual cast on crit setup has something like 18 million DPS with everything up. And as for defenses, we have like 8,000 ES with this graft here that gives us a 1,000 shield. And then also Arcane Cloak, which gives another 2,000 shield when it's up. So that's basically like the overall like offensive and defensive breakdown of the character. And yeah, and for those of you who don't know, Manabond, because like Manabond is a very obscure skill. So Manabond is a skill that does this, just does this blue square. And if you have missing unreserved mana, let's say I delete my mana with Arcane Cloak, then it becomes a lot smaller AoE and also does a lot more damage. So ideally, you want your mana to be like fully depleted, and then Manabond will do the most single target damage. So that's what Manabond is. And then Crackling Lance of Disintegration is pretty straightforward. It's just a spell that does damage. And yeah, that's the main idea of this build. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward, just triggering two spells with Lancing Steel. But the interesting things in this build comes from, I guess, all the mechanics behind it. So I guess we'll just dive like right into the POB. So this is the POB. Okay, so this is basically a POB. You can look at the numbers here. And okay, so the first thing to cover is the damage type conversion. So this build converts 100% of lightning to chaos. And the way that this is done is with Foulborn the Blue Nightmare, and then tattooing lightning res on 7 nodes here for a total, or 8 nodes rather, for a total of 48 lightning converted to chaos, and then also 50% lightning converted to chaos using the Lycia Bloodline Sinner Saint. And that's how we achieve 98% lightning converted to chaos. You could also convert 100% by taking one more small node, but I thought it was not necessary. And with converting 100% to chaos, we're able to, play Occultist, we're able to scale chaos damage and also wither to get 90% increased damage taken. We're also able to take dark ideation to gain 80% increased chaos damage, and also the increased chaos damage makes profane bloom do a lot of damage when it explodes, so that's good. And then also chaos damage allows us to bypass a lot of annoying map mods as well. So that's the main reason for going for chaos damage. It's just more damage because of wither, and then also just much better damage type for map mods, and also the occultist scaling potential. And then if you wanted to push this build on single target, you could also remove profane bloom and take void bacon, which would give you another 20% more damage. So that's the main idea of the conversion there. And then so we convert all the lightning damage to chaos, and then on the tree we just scale power charges, crit, chaos damage, a little bit of energy shield, a little bit of mana, and also flasks. And the reason that we scale flasks is to fully leverage the new Foulborn Choir of the Storm amulet, and this allows us to overcap lightning res to scale our mana. And it doesn't, the UI text is bugged, but if you put 20 catalysts on it, it does become 60% instead of 50%. I tested in game putting the catalysts on, and my mana did go up, but the text was not updated, so that's like a UI bug. But yeah, this is basically mana is increased by 60% of overcap lightning res. And in order to get a lot of lightning res, of course, we have lightning res on every item. And then also using Tides of Time, the Shaper Belt, we can have increased flask effect, flask charge regeneration, and then that in conjunction with Essence Extraction Wheel allows us to have perma uptime on a Bismuth flask, and then also like 90% uptime on this Topaz flask. And all of that basically gives the build a large amount of overcapped lightning res. I think this might be bugged here, but in the game it's like more, that's because I have my ring slot. So yeah, that's basically the main idea. And you can push the lightning res number to like 1,000% if you're playing trade with like optimal clusters and everything. But in SSF, we're kind of constrained to this budget version, which is still able to achieve like 200 to 300 res, depending on if I do my ring swap for a single target or not. And basically plus 300 overcap lightning res is going to be something like 150 to 180% increased maximum mana. So without really taking any mana nodes on the tree, we're able to basically get like 4k mana pool, which not only sustains the mana cost of cast on crit, but also enables Manabond to deal a lot of damage. And that's the main idea of the scaling behind this build. And then because of using Tides of Time, we're able to have like uptime on these alley flasks and stuff. So that's the overarching idea here. And then as like a final thing, Tides of Time also gives 100% increased mana recovery from flasks. And then also the Essence Extraction Wheel gives you 15% increased mana recovery rate, and also more mana recovery as well. And all of that enables our mana flask to be like, 200, 300, maybe even 400% effectiveness. So this mana flask, when I press it, I get a huge amount of mana sustain. So let's say I go down and lose all my mana with Arcane Cloak. If I press my mana flask, look how fast it goes up, right? That's like 1,000 to like 2,000 mana regen a second just from this flask. And this is pretty useful because Manabond costs 9% of our mana. So if we continually use it, the mana will go down to 0. And then at 0 mana, we press the mana flask, and that allows us to basically hover exactly at 0 mana, allowing Manabond to deal the optimal damage because it scales off of missing unreserved mana. So yeah, that's the main idea of this build. And then there's a bunch of other random shit in this build as well. For example, Foulborn Choir of the Storm also gives us level 30 Lightning Bolt. And level 30 Lightning Bolt actually has a huge amount of flat damage on it. If I can pull this up here. So if you look here, Lightning Bolt is a spell that has a cooldown of 0.5 seconds, and level 30 Lightning Bolt has like 600 to 11,000 flat damage, which is quite a lot. And if you look at, level 20 Crackling Lance of Disintegration, this is only 1,000 to 3,000. So level 30 Lightning Bolt actually does a lot of damage, and it's conveniently lightning type, so it's also completely converted to chaos damage. And then if you look here in the POV, I'm getting 3 million damage just from this lightning bolt. So yeah, it's pretty good. And then also there's like a Sigil of Power, which gives like 3 million damage as well if we're inside of it. And we instantly go to max stages because we consume so much mana. And then we also have Radiant Ground from Storming Eshcraft. And this Radiant Ground allows our damage to be lucky, in addition to getting like a little bit of flat added as well for everything, our attacks, our spells, and whatever. And yeah, so we have like a lot of random sources of damage as well, and all this is in the POV. So yeah, that's like an overall breakdown of how the damage and scaling works, and everything else is basically just like ES and mana, and everything here is pretty straightforward. And then for the other graft, we're using Aegis Toll Graft, and this in conjunction with lightning exposure on gloves gives like a shield of like 1k damage that's like basically always up, and it'll like come back up in like 4 seconds if it goes away. So there's that, and that's basically it. And then for mapping, I'm using a Nimbus. And that's because when you're mapping, Nimbus makes the projectiles go everywhere. And then that basically allows you to clear extremely well. You don't have to aim, just run around and do this, and it kills everything. And then for single target, I'll swap like this ring, which has more lightning res and lightning damage and mana. And that will make my overall mana go up. And also, by removing Nimbus, we can aim where we want it to shoot, and that's like much better for a single target because Nimbus, in order for Nimbus to be good on single target, we have to stand on top of the boss, otherwise the projectiles will miss. But the build is like not tanky enough to do that, so yeah, ring swap for a single target. Nimbus is not required for the build. If you didn't have Nimbus, you could just run like returning projectiles, and you would not even lose that much damage because Manabond and Crackling Lance of Disintegration are not projectile based, so returning projectiles does not decrease their damage, it just improves your clear. So maybe you can just swap out like Void Manipulation for returning projectile support if you didn't have a Nimbus, and then you could just like run a damage ring with a lot of lightning res instead, and the overall result would be extremely similar. So I'm just using Nimbus because it's cool, but definitely not required at all. I don't even think it makes the build that much better over returning proj, so yeah. And then, yeah, that's basically it. And then going into like some of the more specifics of this build, Wither is applied using Overwhelming Malice, which we get on a crit medium cluster. Overwhelming Malice gives us 25% chance to wither on hit, and between the 13.79 Lancing Steel of Spraying hits per second, the 6.8 times 2 triggered spells per second, and the 2 lightning bolts per second, we have like exactly enough hits per second to allow 15 stacks of wither. And then we also have the corruption notable here, which will give us 20% wither expire slower. So the wither uptime on single target is like 100% between that. And we're also scaling spell block to give energy shield. It is kind of annoying that my block is like this low, because the build definitely feels kind of squishy without max block, but I just could not figure out a very good way to get max block without like really, really inefficient pathing. So yeah, the build is kind of squishy because the avoidance layer is kind of scuffed, but I don't really know how to fix that. I feel like getting block in SSF is just like so hard. And then yeah, power charge sustain is forbidden power. We spend a lot of mana, so we're always at like max power charges. I have a timeless duel here, Militant Faith with Inner Conviction, and with 7 power charges is like 21% more damage. I have these 2 wheels here that are pretty good QOL in mapping. Mind Drinker allows us to recover 2% mana on kill, which will keep the mana basically at full always in mapping, and that allows Manabond to have the optimal clearing behavior. And then Soul Thief is just ES on kill, so makes the build feel better in mapping as well. Ghost Reaver with this wheel here allows us to leech like 2.4k ES, which is like, you know, it's not great, but it's something. Also possible is taking Ethereal Feast with this mastery to make the leech go up to 4k per second. It's also possible, but that's like 5 points of investment. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not, I don't know. And yeah, that's basically it. I also have a Watcher's Eye here, which is just crit chance, and that's about it. Everything else is pretty straightforward. Yeah, not much to say. I do have a Diamond Flask here, but this Diamond Flask is not necessary. We do have 100% crit chance on the spells and the attack, although if I did not have Assassin's Mark, it would not be 100%. So I run a Diamond Flask just to have always 100% crit chance in mapping. But on single target, you have Assassin's Mark, so that's good enough. And then for the weapon, I chose to use a Battered Foil. The reason we want Battered Foil is it seems to be like the best balance of like APS and base crit. It is kind of annoying to get this because it's a low level base, and it's kind of like hard to find a high eye level, low level base like this. This weapon is also not optimal. In a perfect world, I think the best way to craft this would be spam Deafening Essence of Woe for like really high spell damage until you get T1 attack speed, and then annul everything off, multi-mod, strength, int, crit, and then hits can't be evaded. So like this weapon that I'm using has global multi instead of attack speed. Global multi, of course, will look better in PoE, but I think like having T1 attack speed on the weapon is very important, because in practice you're going to be moving around and stuff, and then your Lancing Steel orb is like not always up, so your overall damage will go down if you don't have enough attack speed. So I wish this had attack speed instead of global multi, but I use all my essences and I did not hit it, so I'm just using this. But yeah, ideally you want attack speed on the weapon. It'll just make your damage a lot better. Shield is just ES on block. I don't even know how much that's even doing because my block sucks, but whatever. And then this build has like 16% PDR via Eldritch Implicits taken as chaos. And then also this body armor implicit endurance charge in conjunction with the charge mastery allows perma 3 endurance charges. So this build has like 28% PDR and then also 12% EDR via endurance charges. Unnerve on the gloves, lightning exposure to enable the Aegis Toll Graft. And then boots is just 14% CDR to hit the 7.57 triggers per second breakpoint for cast on crit. And then here we just have some rings. I am running one Despair on hit ring just to enable Profane Bloom, but on single target this should be replaced with like some Iolite ring with like Deafening Essence of Envy for more chaos damage and lightning res and stuff. And then Tides of Time to enable Foulborn Choir of the Storm. Anointment is just overcharge for the power charge and more damage. And that's about it. Yeah. That's basically the build. Oh, and then I also forgot to mention, I have a small cluster here to enable attack damage leech as mana, which is pretty important. As you can see here, Lancing Steel of Spraying will leech 1000 mana per second, which is a huge source of mana regen, as the build only has like 200 mana regen normally. So this leech is very important. And then the rest of the clusters is just like 8 passive chaos and then 4 passive crit. And my large cluster is not even good. It's only 2 notable, but whatever. Ideally, you would have Dark Ideation with like 2 other good ones. And ideally the one that has attack speed and chaos damage, because attack speed is good. And that's basically it. I think we basically covered everything. So overall, this build kind of unfortunately did not exactly meet my expectations. I was really hoping this build would be able to like do T17s and Ubers, and you would think that it could, right? Like you see, 30% PDR, 8,000 ES with Aegis Toolgraft, with Arcane Cloak, 18 million DPS. Like you would think that this build would be able to do T17s and Ubers, but it actually really struggles in that content, which I was kind of annoyed by. This build is really good at T16.5s. Like farming any T16.5 strat is insane for this build. It'll like auto target everything and kill everything. And you can AFK the league mechanic, you can AFK everything, and it's really good. But as soon as you go into like T17s and like Ubers, it just feels like the build suddenly does nothing. And I'm not totally sure why. I think one problem is like the uptime on the Lancing Steel orb is kind of low. Maybe if I had more attack speed, that would be better. But yeah, it's just that in T17s, I just found myself to just be like dying over and over, and my damage uptime on like Uber bosses was just really bad. So yeah, I guess that's like the limitation of this build. Yeah, maybe if you like made this build better, you could do that kind of content, but at least like for this SSF budget version, you kind of hit a brick wall at that level of content. So yeah, kind of annoying. I was really hoping this build could do endgame content, but as it stands right now, this build is basically just like a T16.5 farmer. But it is pretty fun to play, and it is pretty good at farming T16.5 content. So yep, there is that. If you have any like recommendations for this build, like if you guys have played a similar like mana cast on crit setup before, like if you have any suggestions, feel free to let me know. Like I would like to take this build into like T17s and Ubers, but I just don't know how. So if you know how, feel free to let me know. But yeah, as usual, I'll try to get to any comments, suggestions, whatever, in comment section. Let me know if you have any questions, concerns, and whatever. And yeah, that's basically going to be it for this video. There were also some other things I wanted to try out as well, but I just did not have the resources to. I wanted to try out Indigon, but I just didn't have one. I also wanted to try out Mana Storm, the shield, but I also did not have one. And then I also wanted to try out like the Grasping Mail tech, where there's like a Grasping Mail modifier where you can like get your crit chance increased by overcapped lightning res, which is like, that's what people are doing in Trade League, but like farming Grasping Mail and SSF is like super cringe. If you don't know, you can get a Grasping Mail by vendoring a full inventory of these breach rings. So I'm like trying to build this up, but you get only 1 per rune kill. So it's like hella annoying to like farm this in SSF. So I may or may not quit the league before I get that Grasping Mail. But yeah. But yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. POB will be in the description. I don't know if this will be my last build of the league or not. I am like super running out of like endgame content to do. So yeah, I just don't know. I may or may not do like one more build and try to make like an actual good build that can like do T17s, but I just have no ideas. I have like no good Falborns or anything. And I also am broke because of this build. So yeah, I don't know what build I would do next if I decide to do one, but yeah, stay tuned, I guess. And yeah.